everybody, to another episode of the TPT Podcast, the TPT Podcast, the TPT Podcast. Welcome back in, everybody, to another episode of the TPT Podcast. We have a big-time guest, someone we've had on the show before, former Chiefs quarterback Tyler Thigpen. Tyler, welcome to the show. It's great to have you on here. Exciting to have you on here, especially we got some news we'll talk about from you a little bit later in the show. But, yeah, it's awesome to have you back on the show. How you doing, man?
Doing good, man. Thank you again for having me back on. Look forward to another fun episode of this.
Yes, absolutely. A lot to go over. And we got to have an offensive guy after just the way the Chiefs offense has been going this season. A lot to go over from this last game. I think you're going to kind of be playing therapy for a lot of Chiefs fans in this episode because it's not great in the Chiefs kingdom right now. There are some hopes. I'm not gonna act like the season is over, but there are some hopes right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, that's just the thing, man. I look forward to talking ball, and let's see if we can figure out what's going on with those guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have to, and that, where we really just got to kind of just get right into some of the mess with just that Buffalo Bills game. I know we kind of want to that was Sunday. Let's just go into the Patriots, which we will get into a little bit. But what do you think just right now is happening with the Chiefs? Why is it? And we talked last year around this time, I'm pretty sure, when, things were going right for the Chiefs. They have the same kind of roster, but it's just not clicking. Why do you think some of the reasons are where it's just not clicking with the same receivers?
The biggest thing, I mean, you can certainly see there's some frustration, whether it's Patrick trying to, put it all on his shoulders and make a play, whether it be extending the play, and there's just some things that, haven't gone their way. The ball hasn't fallen their way or in certain situations. And there's certainly, you can see to me, the end of the game, obviously with the offsides call, which I'm sure we'll talk about, but, you could just see the frustration. I know that was just Patrick being frustrated towards that specific play or that referee calling that exact play or that offsides. But, I sense that there was more frustration coming out of him just overall that he feels. And when the thing is once you put yourself on that pedestal like they've done time and time again, year after year since he's been there, and going to the Super Bowl 3 out of the last 4 years or something or whatever. I mean, to me, you put a target on your back because everybody's like, all right, this is defending Super Bowl champ. We want to knock them off. We want to be the team that did that. And you put a lot of pressure on yourself to go out there and try to strive to be perfect. And, at the end of the day, these guys just need to slow down and say, hey, take it one game at a time and trust that the work you're putting in during the week is going to help you prepare for, whatever comes at you on Sundays.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
And, and another thing too is, even though it's, there's a lot more outside noise that, so many Chiefs fans know about these days is Taylor Swift. I mean, I think there's bets she's going to get shown. And I know that sounds trivial, but, the attention that they're getting now, even more so, from that, Travis dating Taylor Swift is like, that's just magnifying it even more to where now they even have more pressure because guess what? All these Swifties more or less that are becoming Chiefs fans or whatever it may be, noise that, that can sometimes leak into a locker room that, you didn't necessarily have the past couple of years. And now you have that media attention that teammates would probably say is more of a distraction than anything.
Yeah, I agree. And it's something where it's when you're the top dog, and you probably can relate to this a little bit, is where when you have a team coming in like the Chiefs, or you're playing against a team like the Chiefs. So you were with the Bills in 2011, right? You had the Patriots come in. I'm pretty sure in 2011 you guys beat them in Buffalo. And again, it was, when you have a team like that, the Patriots consistently coming in, every week in practice, talk about you want to beat them. They're the guys coming in. They're in the Super Bowl every like everything in practice. You want to talk about how you're the underdog, and they're the top dog. Every single week, the Chiefs are going to be looked at as the defending Super Bowl champs, and people want to beat them. Look what happened with Green Bay. So is that something where teams also, again, that outside noise where teams can kind of play up to the Chiefs, and those teams really want to knock out that top dog?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, each team, every single, I think, player that plays in the NFL, I mean, every week you're preparing, it doesn't matter who you're playing, whether the Chiefs or not. But I think when you do play someone like the Chiefs, who that's been at the top for the past, 5 or 6 years or however long it's been, you do elevate your game. You say, hey, I want to knock these guys off. I mean, obviously you want to knock everybody off. That's your ultimate goal, is to win every game. But, it's one of those things to where when you have a chance to knock off the Patrick Mahomes or knock off the Travis Kelce because now he's dating Taylor Swift,
right, yeah,
thing like that kind of gives those other people a little more motivation to say, hey, we just knocked off, and to see Taylor Swift maybe sad or something. It's just something so simple as that these guys are getting themselves up. And, it is there. Some of these guys, teams that, Buffalo, they've been going to the playoffs, but right now they're on the cusp of not making the playoffs. So to me, it's like, why not try to upset, you're coming in playing the Chiefs, knowing pretty much they're almost about to clinch, a playoff berth in a sense with 1 or 2 more wins, maybe, from there. But it's just one of the things to where, why wouldn't you get up for that game? And then the Bills-Chiefs game, I know we're talking about because they just played. That's become one of a rivalry between Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes over the past couple of years. So that's probably going to be a rivalry for years to come.
Yeah, I agree. And when a rivalry like that, it's like you can't – some of the mistakes the Chiefs have made, and like you just said, when you're the top dog, everyone is going to be so meticulous. They're going to be so well prepared trying to go beat you when you're fumbling the ball, when you're not catching passes, and you played the quarterback position. How do you approach at this point what Patrick's been going through? I mean, is it almost time where and I know it was a little bit of a bad look after the game, blaming the refs, and we'll get into the refs, but is it almost where he does kind of have to call out his receivers publicly, or is that something you kind of have to stay away from, or is it finally time to say, hey, these guys got to step up, they got to play better?
I mean, I don't think personally, I think you would lose some of your teammates if you came out and called him out in the media. So I think he's doing the right thing by him taking the responsibility a lot in his interviews. Right. Because once you blame it on the receivers, I think it's the coach's job in the meeting room, meaning the receivers coach, to step up and say, hey guys, we've got to help them out. These drops are killing us. And, it's just one of those things to where you're an elite receiver. I mean, there's, 120 of you guys in the NFL, like starters, more or less, if you're receivers. It's like, hey, at the end of the day, there's a reason you're on this roster, for one, but we've got to play like we're a professional football player. There's a reason they got to that position. Catch the damn football. Pardon my French. But yeah,
absolutely.
I know Patrick is a very accurate passer. So I've always said as a quarterback, he's back there in the damn trenches, more or less in the crosshairs of these defensive linemen that are pinning their ears back, trying to knock his teeth out. And sometimes you're not going to always be the most accurate. You're going to throw up, the ball's going to be off target or whatever. But Dame, if your hands, you better catch the football, because I can promise you, when Patrick Mahomes throws it and he gets hit dead in the mouth from one of these guys and his receiver makes a catch, he doesn't think about that hit, because he's excited about getting back up and going down there and celebrating his teammate that just caught the ball. But when you get hit in the mouth and you look down and you can always see him when he's laying on the ground, he kind of looks his head up to see if he catches it, and he doesn't catch it, he drops it. That is deflating as a quarterback, because now you got to pick yourself up off the ground. You got to go back to the huddle. You're whatever down and distance it might be, but you almost forget about getting hit. The same exact hit, if a guy catches the ball versus not catching it, you don't even, when a guy catches, you don't even feel those hits, in my opinion, from my experience.
Yeah, and I mean, that probably is. I know when, even me, if I played basketball and, a guy came and ran in my leg, but I got to AM1, I'm not thinking, whatever, that guy didn't catch, my teammate missed a pass over there, or, whatever the mistake was before that. It's like, hey, I just got that bucket. I feel great. I feel fine. Like, exactly. I'm not worried about, I just got hit or hurt. And I agree. And like you said, they do. They got to catch the damn ball. And, it's funny when I watched the game. I watched the game with my dad, and he watched the Chiefs from Len Dawson all the way to now. And one of the things, again, he played, NBA ball, he played college ball, but his thing was always, he was always taught, like, you can't be a great team if you can continuously make these uncharacteristic mistakes. You can't have it where, and this is what I really wanted to ask you is, with Kadarius Toney, I love Kadarius Toney. I love some of the things he can do with the football. But is this one of the things where Andy Reid has to kind of send a message and say, we're not suiting you up for this game? It's 2 times this season where you've dropped the ball, you've had it, or is that maybe something where, you may lose guys like that? Or, we know Andy Reid's the guy of second chances. Look at all the guys he's given second chances for Michael Vick, Tyreek Hill, guys he always believes in. Rashid Rice fumbled on Sunday. He went right back to Rice. Next play, they got the ball. They threw a screen to Rice. He got 15 yards. But is this a thing where they have to say, we would have had almost legitimately 2 more wins if you did not play on those plays? If you weren't in on those plays, we probably would be better off. Do you think this is something where he does have to send a message, or is that something where you may lose a guy like that?
There's certain a line you can kind of skirt on that. I think I'm a quarterback and the leader that Patrick Mahomes is. I think he's going to him, Kadarius Toney, and saying, like, hey, man, you're still my guy. I'm still going to trust you because, at the end of the day, the reason he's throwing him balls is because he's developing that practice and everything, and the coaches are calling those plays. It's just one of those things that guys go into funk sometimes, and all it takes is maybe that one game of him having a big catch or 2 and him getting back into the player that they potentially know. I don't think necessarily Andy Reid's going to, pull the reins and say, hey, you're not going to dress this game. I don't think that's their ultimate goal, but they certainly could. I'm not in the locker room. I'm not in the meeting rooms, from that. So I think that's a tough decision, but I think a guy like Patrick Mahomes, who, continue to play at the level he's at, I think, and be the leader he is, I think he's going to go to Kadarius Toney and say, hey, I'm still going to throw you the football, man. I trust you that you're going to do it. But at the end of the day, if for some reason he doesn't trust him and he's in the game, then he's going to probably be looking at other places. But, at the end of the day, if they call a place for him to take the top off the defense, he's going to try to get the ball downfield, to him. So, it's just one of those things to where, you just got to continue to work with those guys and trust that, hey, the ability that he has and what he's shown.
Right, yeah.
It's one of those things where it's almost frustrating as a teammate or even as a coach. It's like, hey, we know what this guy is capable of doing. It's just going to lost his confidence. And if we pull him out, hell, he may go in the tank and we may lose him forever in a sense. But if we sit there and try to pump him up and give him the confidence he may need, then I think that could ultimately help him in the long run, in my opinion.
Yeah. And the thing that I think is frustrating as a fan is we saw last year, right? We're like, oh my goodness, like going into this offseason, I talked to so many Chiefs fans. I even talked to, Jason Dunn, some former Chiefs players. I'm like, this may be the deepest we've ever been at receiver. And then all of a sudden it's like, if we had a guy, just a guy, like Steve Smith says, a jag, just a guy, someone that could come in and just catch a pass, it would be like, where would the Chiefs be right now? Would they be, they start out 6-1. Would they still be, 11-1? Would they be 12-1? And I don't know what happened from this year to last year, where again you have the same receiving core. You add a guy like Rashid Rice. You lose a guy like Juju. But what is the reason for just this kind of just downgrade at receiver with the same roster as last year? Is it Matt Nagy coming in and replacing Eric Bieniemy? What is some of your, the reasons you have for just the absolute just kind of just fall of the offense?
I think it might be come down to these guys are just pressing themselves. They expect, to me, week in and week out to win football games because of what they've done past of going to the Super Bowl, in the past 3 out of 4 years or whatever it is. But like, to me, once you get that expectation, you expect it every week. And it's just one of those things that they've lost a couple games that they should have won here and there. And like, everybody will always say, the Patriots way. Nobody used to like that when they were playing with the Patriots. They didn't like the way Bill Belichick did. Anybody on the outside or that got outside of that program and, I played with a couple guys at the Bills. They were like, man, it wasn't fun. But at the end of the day, winning fixes everything.
Yeah.
It's been fun, but I promise you on Sunday when they're winning those football games, they're not thinking about how Bill Belichick is ripping them a new one or the way he acts or whatever. These guys have lost a couple close games that, here we are. If he's not 1 inch over the line or whatever, a half a foot over the line or whatever it is, with Travis Kelce making that play, he's probably up for play of the year honors in a sense. So it's just one of those things where it's a small thing here and there that get magnified just because of what else happened in other games or what happened in that game. So I think, if he's not all sides there, I think this is a whole different conversation we're having this week. It's like, hey, the Chiefs are back on track. Started a little slow last week, but they picked it up. We knew we were never out of the game because when you got 15 back there at the helm, you've always got a chance. So, just one of those things to where, I don't know moving forward what has happened, but somebody in that locker room is going to have to step up as a leader and say, hey, guys, we got to get this together. We got 4 games left. Let's make this shit happen for the rest of the year.
Yeah, and that's where I think I am right now. Is it's like I think that's where Eric Bieniemy came in place, really. And I know he didn't call the plays. That was, Andy Reid said, he's not the one calling the plays. He implemented stuff during the week. He's not just there just to, be there. He had a job with the Chiefs. And a lot of people said, well, Eric Bieniemy didn't call plays. Eric Bieniemy didn't call plays. I think that's now. People are calling for Matt Nagy's job. I'm like, guys, I don't necessarily think he's calling a lot of plays either. He may have plays where he came up with something during the week and he said, hey, guys, this is what Andy, hey, I got this. I want to implement this, during the Bills game or whatever it may be. But Andy Reid probably is he's been doing it for 30 years. I'm guaranteeing he's still calling the majority of the plays. So I'm not going to just have this be a fire Matt Nagy show. The only thing I think that's different between Eric Bieniemy and Matt Nagy is I think Eric Bieniemy, and again, this is just what's been said in Washington, what's been said in Kansas City is he will let guys know you're not performing. You're not doing this. I think the accountability with Eric Bieniemy, he's an old school guy. We've seen on the sideline with Travis Kelce, cursing off, shoving it away. That's a competitor. We even saw it with Chris Jones, but people are making a big deal, which I'm not gonna, him and getting into it with the defensive line coach. That's just guys competing. But I think that's the only difference. I think maybe this year is I don't know if guys are being held accountable as much as years prior. I can't confirm that. To me, it's just that's the only thing I can kind of point my finger to because it's the same type of roster. You have it where it's so many receivers from last year, so many receivers this year, and it's just they're just not performing. So have you ever had it where it's a sense where, you went from you were on a team where you kind of changed coaches or coordinator and things were just a little bit different or, it may not have been where it was 100% the coordinator's fault, but it was just some things were just a step off from the year prior.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, somebody like Coach Bieniemy, he was the running backs coach when I got drafted to the Minnesota Vikings. So I actually knew him well or whatever. And I knew he took it upon himself as soon as Adrian Peterson got there. Adrian Peterson, he could run the damn football. Like, there's no question about that. He showed that he could do that at a high level in the NFL. But the one thing that he lacked was pass blocking. And they said in order for you to make it in the NFL, you're going to have to learn. And I remember break meetings early, they would go out to the practice field and set dummies up and teach him because that was the best way for him to learn. And, coming back, that just showed me what kind of coach Eric Bieniemy was. Like, hey, if we drafted this guy, this was my guy, I put my name on the line. I wanted him, in the draft room on draft day. Like, hey, I want Adrian Peterson here or whatever. He was going to take it upon himself to make him an all-pro and potentially a future Hall of Famer. So, having a guy like that on the sidelines that, like you said and brought up, that, he wasn't afraid to get in somebody's ass and more or less tell them like it is. And somebody like Coach Matt Nagy, whatever, he's a first-year guy as an OC, so he's still trying to, he knows the players because he was there before, but he's in a role not necessarily been in before. So he maybe doesn't have that command or feel comfortable enough to where he can come out there and mother F somebody without somebody just turning on him. When Coach Bieniemy would do it, they would take it and, like, hey, you know what, I'm going to play better because he just got at me. I know where he's coming from. They may not know him, Matt Nagy, well enough in that role, in that position to, or he may not feel comfortable enough of getting in somebody or, getting on somebody from that standpoint. So I think that's a very good point that you brought up. And, it's just one of those things to where, I don't know if it's, like I said, if a coach is going to have to step up, or, and that's one thing that I think too, because Coach Eric Bieniemy, to me, he was a player's coach. He played the football. He played. So, yeah, he might get in somebody's ass on the sideline on game day, but I bet during the week, man, he can relate to those guys. Like, hey, man, I know what you're going through right now. I know you've lost your little bit of confidence, man, but we believe in you. Like something as simple as that, going to a guy and telling him you believe in him, man, giving him that extra little bit of, like, hey, I might need a little extra push me to pick me up right now because I'm down in the dumps because I've dropped a few passes here or missed a few play calls or whatever it might be. When you've got somebody like that can chew your ass, but also relate to you on the other side and show you that that's just, to me, that's to me is a good sign of a great coach.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm not going to sit here and I think Eric Bieniemy, again, he wasn't calling plays. It wasn't. That's what people are saying. Oh, if we had Eric Bieniemy, we would see this. Guys, he wasn't calling the plays. Now, can there be certain things, like you said, being a player's coach, certain things in a locker room where, yeah, you may be used to a guy, and they also have a rookie wide receiver coach. Like they do. They have changes. Eric Lewis was there for a while. Who, again, he played in the NFL. He was another guy who probably best suited, and week to week, going up to players and like, hey, I remember being in a slump. I remember, playing with Hall of Fame guys like Brett Favre, playing with really good quarterbacks and trying to get on the same page as some of these guys. And, sometimes that does help is, you have guys that are players coach, some guys are not. I still think there's a silver lining for this Chiefs, and that's really what I wanted to get into. As we start to, get into some of these games here is they got the Patriots coming up. Then they go and they play the Raiders. Then they play the Bengals and the Chargers. Right now, the Kansas City Chiefs will not play a starting quarterback in the NFL. They won't. Every team they play, they'll play against a backup quarterback. And we've seen, hey, there's backups that came in and absolutely diced up some teams. I mean, again, there was times where, you had to come in for the Chiefs as a backup and win games. So, you can't go into the games and just saying, we have a bunch of backups. But let's be real. These are very winnable games for the Chiefs. And if you go into a team like New England and you can't really find your mojo, with all due respect to the New England Patriots and Bill Belichick, this is really where I think the Chiefs have to. If they go into this game with New England, they have to start finding their stride going into the playoffs, because I don't know if they'll get the 1 seed. It's still possible they can get the 1 seed. But what is kind of the way the Chiefs can just get back on track these last 4 games?
Well, I mean, first of all, you touched on it. They won't play a starting quarterback essentially in the last 4 games between, the Patriots, the Raiders, Chargers, as well as the. But I can tell you right now, those 4 teams, I can promise you, if I'm a coach for the Chiefs right now, I'm not overlooking any of those teams. I don't give a damn if they're backups or not, because I can promise you those teams, their Super Bowl is playing the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, like we just said.
Correct me if I'm wrong, and obviously, are any of those 4 teams in the playoff hunt?
Yeah, almost all of them. Yeah.
Okay. So at the end of the day, why wouldn't? I mean, they're playing for, obviously at some point that starter's more than likely because they have a franchise guy in front of them. I know the Raiders, I think they've, got a little bit up in the air as far as a franchise guy.
Right. Yeah.
But those backup quarterbacks are not playing. They're playing for that team they're playing for, but they're also trying to put on showcase for 31 other teams because they never know who's going to call it. So to me, if I'm a player on the opposing team, if I'm, what's his name for the Patriots, the one that's starting this week?
Bailey Zappi.
Yeah. So if I'm him this week, I mean, if I'm Zappi this week, why wouldn't I want to come in and say, hey, I beat Patrick Mahomes? So at the end of the day, you want to knock off the best. To be the best, you got to beat the best. So it's just one of those things for the Chiefs. They just got to take it one game at a time. I mean, the Patriots played really well against the Steelers last year.
Yeah.
Put up some good numbers, there in the first half. I know they kind of stalled out in the second half, but they had a commanding lead to put it in cruise control. But, at the end of the day, I think the Chiefs have to play within themselves, and they can't let the outside noise or the frustration from the media is talking about the drops or, so-called the play calling or whatever it is from that standpoint. I mean, the only people that know really what's going on in that building are the people that are in that building. And they've got to together, and they can't turn on one another. That's the media's job, and the outside noise is to try and make them turn against one another. So to me, it's like, those guys got to stick together, and they're a team that, the majority of them were on the same roster last year that went to the Super Bowl. So they know what it takes to get back to it, to that. And honestly, you have to win in December. I mean, that's what it comes down to. Every coach always talked about, like, if you can win December, you give yourself a chance, because, that's just what it comes down to. Because if you play good ball going into the playoffs, that's really ultimately what it comes down to. If you can play great all first part of the 3 quarters of the season, and then you get into the December and you crap the bed and you still make the playoffs, well, guess what? You're still thinking about the last 4 games that you played in December. So to me, this is really going to be a true test for them to figure out moving forward.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, if there's any game where it's like you got to look at the season, there's any game to play, kind of the least, toughest part of your schedule. This is it. You the month going into the playoffs, you want to get hot and go into the playoffs. And something you said is what I think Chiefs fans should be confident. As bad as it's been, like I said, you've been on teams where things went terribly wrong. You've been on teams that things went right. But if 8-5 and you're still in contention for the first seed, is as bad as I'm going to get in the last 5 or 6 years of my Chiefs fandom, I'm okay with that. Because I remember what it was like when I was 12 years old and the Chiefs weren't very good. I remember what it was like when I was a younger kid and I had to sit there and I'm like, come on, Matt Castle, please just give me a game. I've been there. I've absolutely been there where things weren't great. And it's like, Chiefs fans, I know things aren't great right now. You still have Mahomes. And like you said, you still have a majority of the roster you did last year, plus a better defense. This defense, I know we even talked about them, because the good thing is usually in the past, what we do talk about. We talk about the defense almost the whole dang episode because they're not as good as they, that they're, what's going on with defense? If the defense can click. If you have a defense right now that's playing the way it's playing, top 5 ball, and you have a guy when Pacheco comes back, you have Drew come back, you have Donovan Smith come back, I think they'll be okay. Every game they've lost, it's been at the last second. Last play of the game, they screwed up. If they can just have one guy not make that mistake, one guy just say, hey, you know what? I'm going to go make this play. They'll be okay. They just went head-to-head with the Eagles, who are one of the best teams in the league. They just went head-to-head with the Bills, who are still one of the best teams, in my opinion, in the league. Every team you went up against, Detroit, you were at the last second with Detroit. So as you look at the AFC, and then this is a question I've kind of asked, some other podcasters, in your opinion. So if you look at Mahomes' era, is this maybe the worst Chiefs team he's been on, but also the worst AFC he's seen? Do you think this is one of the, because you don't have the Bengals, you may not have the Bills. So at the same time, as bad as it's been for the Chiefs, you could also look at the AFC and say, hey, you know what? They may have to play a team like the Steelers, no disrespect, in the first round.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's just what it comes down to. I mean, lucky for them that this is a down year in a sense, because they're still at the top of the division. And I mean, as frustrating as Chiefs fans may be right now, you still have to just stop for a second and be like, dang, we're still number 1 in the division. Yes, you're not the 12-1. They're pretty, the record in the sense of wins and losses or whatever, and you've already clinched your first round playoff bye that they pretty much done a couple years before getting to the last few games of the season. So that's given, I guess, Chiefs fans a lot of confidence, more or less. So there's always going to be that doubt, because you see us losing the close games at the end of the game, that in years past we were able to put those teams away. It's certainly frustrating. So doubt does creep into your mind. But at the end of the day, after all the craziness that's gone on this year for the Chiefs and the losses that they've endured, they've all been close losses. They've only been one or two plays away from, the ball rolling their way, in the sense of them winning those games. But to say, like, after all that being said, they're still at the top of the division. So, I mean, to me, that's something to be said, for those guys. And they know that, at the end of the day, they've got 2 division games left the year. So if they take care of business, I mean, obviously you want to take care of business on all of them. But if you take care of business within the division, you're in the playoffs. And that's the main thing for them.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, if you look at, so like we just mentioned, these last 4 games, the Chiefs went out. The Ravens still have to go play Miami Dolphins, Jacksonville Jaguars, San Francisco 49ers, and the Pittsburgh Steelers. That is the complete opposite of what the Chiefs have to go up against, where you're just playing, again, playoff team after playoff team. The rest of the teams they play this season are top 5 seeds in both conferences. You're either playing a team in Jacksonville that's still fighting to try to get the first seed. You're playing against the 49ers, who have to try to keep the first seed, and then Miami, who needs to beat the Ravens to get the first seed. And then the Steelers as well, as they're trying to stay in the playoffs. So you're kind of dealing with the same thing with the Ravens, where if they slip up one or two games versus talented teams like that, you're right there in the first seed. You're still in the first seed. And if you would have told me before the season, the Chiefs will go 12-5, I would have said, okay. Yeah. I mean, 12-5 is a great record. Obviously, yeah, when you start out with 6-1, you're like, hey, maybe we kind of, we only lose 2 or 3 games this year. But again, they played some good teams. It's been to the last second. I'm not just going to just jump ship and just, Chiefs are done. I'm done with the Chiefs. They're going to lose. You still have a majority of the guys you had from last year. I think you'll be okay. You still have Travis Kelce. You still have a lot of these guys. Rasheed Rice. I mean, my God. I'm talking to one number 4 to another number 4, absolutely having a terrific year. I still think the Chiefs can get there. And like we just said, I mean, to be honest, this has been the weakest AFC we've seen. I mean, Holmes, you may not have to play the Bills and you may not have to play the Bengals. It's really getting past either maybe the Jags, Ravens, or Dolphins. You beat the Dolphins, you beat the Jags, and you could get, the Ravens are a good team, but that's still a team we still have to see a guy like Lamar Jackson in the playoffs go get. So what is your confidence level on the Chiefs, again, from winning out these games and then making some noise in the playoffs? Is this still a team that can get back to the big one? Can they get to the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I think they can. I mean, I think if you eliminate some of the few mistakes, and those are all correctable, that you're able to correct those mistakes. So at the end of the day, like, it's not like you can't fix some of the things that are happening offensively. I mean, you can certainly correct those mistakes. And I think if you correct those and eliminate those, I think you got something special moving forward. One of the things that, let's just say they do win out and, so the Ravens or whatever, Dolphins, they win out, whatever, from that standpoint, one of those teams becomes clinches a home field advantage or whatever. The Chiefs may have to do something there, not used to doing, more or less, of going on the road to win a play. But I think, with them having 2 away games out of the last 4, I think that's a good test right there to say, hey, how are we going to do on the road? Because there's a chance we may have to go on the road. So, for all those teams that are still in the hunt that they're playing here for the rest, I mean, they're going to get their best shot. So I think that's I think that's something for the Chiefs to say, hey, you know what? We're going to get everybody's best shot, but damn it, they're going to get our best shot as well. So, it's us against everybody. Yeah, they're going to have the doubters that are going to say, oh, they're not as good as they were last year. But I think inside that locker room, they're saying to themselves, like, hey, we're going to go out there and do this thing, and we're going to prove to them that we deserve to be back there just like we were last year.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And like I said, if you may have to go on the road, like you may have to. If Patrick Mahomes is the guy we says he is, if he is the guy who says if he's going to be up there one day with Tom Brady, he's going to have to go play on the road. There's going to be, again, and Chiefs fans, listen, we let's not forget. Again, we've had some years where things were not good. There's going to be years where we don't win the Super Bowl. I don't want it to be this year, like I said, because you're not having to go face a Josh Allen or a Joe Burrow potentially. So that makes it just more bitter as you're like, man, like we didn't have to go face any of the big dogs this year. It's almost like in the 90s. It's like you didn't have to go play Michael Jordan in the East. You're thinking, damn, like we should have won a title. So that's how I kind of look at it. Is like, if you don't have Josh Allen, you don't have Joe Burrow, those upper echelon guys, it's like you can get past Kenny Pickett. No disrespect. You can get past the guy like Kenny Pickett or a guy like Minshew. So, that's what I think it comes down to in the playoffs for the Kansas City Chiefs. I think they'll be okay. But as we start to wrap up the show here, I wanted to get into some big news that we talked about earlier. I think some news that got released today. Am I right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, some news that got released today that you will be joining the South Carolina Athletic Hall of Fame. How does it feel to be in the South Carolina Hall of Fame?
Man, it's a phenomenal feeling, man. I mean, it's just something that, I'm part or blessed to be a part of, man. It's, I was telling somebody earlier today, it's like, you never think about, all the accolades that you may get after you're done playing ball, because when you're in when you're at practice, grinding in the off season, all that stuff, you're not thinking about what I may get, what award I may get down the road or whatever.
Right.
don't think about that, but it's nice sometimes when you're out of ball for a while and you take a step back and you get an accolade like this. It's just a great honor to kind of reflect back with your teammates, your coaches, and just everybody's like, and I've always been a humble guy that doesn't put myself before others. I've always given other people credit because that's essentially the way I've always been. And for people to reach out and say this is something you deserve. And my first response is I said to you earlier that I've seen friends and acquaintances that have gotten to the South Carolina Athletic Hall of Fame, and I'd say when I saw them going in, I mean, for one, congratulations, but on the side, I'd be like, man, this is probably something that I would never even be considered for. And to get that call on this past Friday, to get that call, and for them to tell me that I'm going to be, inducted into the class of 2024 Hall of Fame, I mean, that was just it was very humbling, and I'm very excited to be a part of that class and be a part of that team.
Yeah, obviously, like I said, you're representing Coastal Carolina there behind you. You got the shirt on and everything.
Yeah.
So is there any former teammates, even people that may be in the NFL or any guys you just want to shout out real quick?
Some guys that I play with. I mean, obviously my receivers at Coastal, man. I mean, without them, I mean, they put me on the map my senior year.
Right.
Perry Parks, Chris Noble, Santini Washington, those guys. But NFL wise, man, I mean, all those guys that I played with, from a first ballot Hall of Famer, Tony Gonzalez, Dwayne Bowe being my main receiver. I mean, those years in Kansas City, to me, people always ask, I enjoyed it every place I played, but man, it was special in Kansas City because that's where I played the most. And that's where you're a part of a brotherhood for starters, from little league all the way up through the NFL. But yeah, those were guys that you were out there on the field with at the game, going into the battles when I was in Kansas City. So man, it's pretty special to be awarded that honor. But without those guys, I would not be there.
Yeah, absolutely, and congratulations, man. That is awesome. Before we get out of here, I had a fun question for you. Is we saw that play on Sunday of Travis Kelce, and I know last time you were on here, we talked about that play versus the Buccaneers. Is there any other play in your career where you kind of got in the huddle, and if it was the Chiefs or whoever, and you kind of called the play, and you were like, okay, yeah, this play is going to be, this is going to be fun. Is there any kind of special play you kind of remember watching Travis Kelce grab it and throw a spiral to Kadarius Toney? Was there any kind of play, similar to that, or just a fun play you may have had outside of you catching a 80-yard bomb from Mark Bradley?
I mean, I don't think there's any really been in my, in my career that I could say that, like, hey, once they called this play, I mean, obviously that play when it got called, the touchdown throwback pass, that was one of those that I'm like, we finally got it set up after we ran those two plays where the DB was just shooting in, and I came back to the sideline and told the coach, hey, they're not respecting me or whatever. So sure enough, as soon as they called it, I'm like reading it off the wristband. I'm like, there's no way we're calling this play, because in college, I always wanted to throw back to the quarterback. Quarterbacks will always say, hey, we've got the best hands. It doesn't matter. We don't play receiver. We always said we've had the best hands, and I'll always argue that to the day I die, more or less. So you ask any other quarterback that plays, and they'll say the exact same thing. We'll always argue that. But, and being in the play of Travis Kelce, I mean, that straight up ad lib. I don't think that was even called at all because, to me, are you thinking that they called that play?
No. I think that was scratch. I think that was as it goes, because we know if you listen to some of his podcasts and what Travis Kelce does, he's like, it's the most underused play in the football. People, use it more. I think it was just really good awareness. And, I mean, he threw a dart. I was like, yeah, I know he used to play quarterback. I'm like, that was a dart. And I remember seeing the flag. My dad was just yelling, please let it stand. Please let it stand. And for some reason, I said it's either going to be false start on Jawan Taylor or someone's offsides. But, I mean, to me, that was one of the more fun plays I've seen since you went and caught a pass like that.
Absolutely. And honestly, I mean, if that doesn't get called back, I mean, that's probably hands down the play of the year. There's no question.
100%.
Up by 4, and now it's on the Buffalo Bills to have to go down and score a touchdown. So, I mean, that just – and I bet if you slowed that play down, because I bet you the DB's hand was probably within 1 or 2 inches of hitting that ball and tipping it to making it, a fumble and whatnot. But to be able to, I mean, I'm sure the coaches, as soon as they saw him doing that, they're probably just like, "What are you?" Yeah, like they're just kind of one of those where,
Yeah.
it's kind of like do or die at that point. But what a great athlete he is in the sense to be able to ad lib like that and just have awareness of, for one, you're about to get hit, but then to grab the ball and obviously be able to just take it out of your, from being tucked and to throw it and be as accurate and throw a dime like he did. So, credit to Travis Kelce on that. That's pretty special.
Absolutely. Well, Tyler, as we wrap it up here, we kind of covered everything on the Chiefs offense. Any last words you have to Chiefs fans to just kind of just be therapists here and kind of just calm some of the Chiefs fans down? The world is not ending with the Chiefs season.
What was that Aaron Rodgers used to say? What do you say? Relax.
Relax. Yeah, he just would spell it relax.
Just at the end of the day, I mean, I just think that as long as you've got 15 at the helm, I think anything can happen for you guys. Defense is playing great. As long as we continue to do that, as long as we don't have any major injuries or anything like that. I mean, I think the biggest thing, if they can distract and block out the outside, I think they'll be back exactly where they were last year and making a trip to the Super Bowl because, like you said, they don't have to go through those Joe Burrows and potentially the, Josh Allen guys. Yeah. And that's just one of those things to where I see what you're saying. It could be certainly frustrating if the 1 year you don't have to go through those elite quarterbacks, we don't even get to go to it because we lost or whatever it might be. So, but at the end of the day, I think if they take care of business the next 4, at least win 3 out of the last 4 games.
Right.
Obviously 4 would be great, but at least win 3 out of the last 4 and just, set the tempo going into the playoffs and continue to ride that way. Whether you get a first round bye or not, at the end of the day, you got to play football games.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Tyler, again, thank you so much for joining the TPT podcast. Guys, make sure you guys go check out all of our other stuff on social media. We will see you guys next time on the TPT podcast.